Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Task Force Admiral. We are doing busy morning at Point Luck. Midway Island is under attack. A joint task force comprising 3 carriers is about to try to stop the fearsome Kido Butai ahead of the planned invasion of the American outposts against the elite of Japanese naval aviation. Is there any hope for the crews of USS Yorktown, Enterprise, and Hornet, along with the courageous fighters of the besieged atoll? Relive the fateful morning that saw the tide turn and try your own luck. So this is the historical version of the scenario, not the hard hypothetical version. But let's get into it.
The American carrier force stands on the brink of a day that will decide its fate and shape the Navy's legacy for 100 years. Rear Admirals Fletcher and Spruance are lying in ambush northeast of Midway Island on an intercept course with the Japanese carrier strike force led by Admiral Nagumo. Yesterday, the enemy invasion force heading for Midway was sighted for the first time, confirming that a massive operation is underway against American forward bases, here and farther north in the Aleutians. According to our estimates and the enemy's operational playbook so far, Japanese carriers are expected to strike Midway's defenses at dawn. Ideally, USS Yorktown with Task Force 17 and USS Enterprise and Hornet with Task Force 16 will unleash hell on the unsuspecting raiding force, if everything goes well. Although American carriers have already engaged Japanese forces, some of our crews remain unseasoned. Hornet's air group in particular is relatively fresh and inexperienced. The same can be said of Midway's defenses, a ragtag collection of squadron detachments. Roughly 100 Marine, Navy, and Army aircraft are concentrated on the tiny strip of sand that is Eastern Island, racing for the blow to come. They know they are bait, but they will not go down without a fight, though their ability to strike a decisive blow remains uncertain. The Japanese force represents the very best they can muster. While we believe that sustained attrition has weakened the elite corps of pilots first revealed in Pearl Harbor, their losses have likely been largely offset by replacements. We expect between 4 and 6 carriers, depending on what the enemy has been able to assemble after their most recent foray into the South Pacific. They took a bloody nose there, but no one can yet say how much that encounter will affect the unfolding operations around the Hawaiian chain. Admiral Nimitz has provided his flag officers with what he believes to be an ideal ambush position designated Point Luck, based on the latest intelligence available. After withdrawing eastward during the night, the 2 carrier task forces are now returning to their assigned coordinates. Let us hope our predictions prove correct, but only the morning searches will tell. Your turn to write history. Good luck.
Okay. Well, our strategic objectives are to force the enemy to retreat from the area and recall the invasion of Midway, and to cause excessive losses to the enemy while keeping our own damage to a minimum. So, it's only 1 day long. Fairly complex, but not particularly difficult, because we had the surprise on our side, you might say. I won't read the full briefing, we'll just get into the scenario, as it were. So here we are, 0300, June 4th, 1942. So we have Task Force 17, the Yorktown, and Task Force 16, the Enterprise and Hornet. Just behind us to the east, we are heading off to rendezvous at Point Luck. And furthermore, we have Midway and the Sand Island Seaplane Base. Down there to the south of us, that little speck there. The reason why they call it Midway is because, well, it just happens to be pretty much midway between the United States and Asia, because they're clever like that. Alright, I'm going to set up strikes here, but I'm not going to launch any scouts, because I want Midway's PBYs to locate the Japanese first, like they pretty much did historically. Now, I'm going to hold off too much commentary on history. I will include a fair amount in this video, but again, I'm kind of waiting for the full, release to come out, because this early access version fairly recently released in late January 2026. So it's still pretty new to me. I've been so busy lately, I haven't had much time to play games. Not including any torpedo bombers in these strikes because they're short-legged and they won't have the range to get there and get back. A lot of the information I'm getting on history is taken from Jonathan Parshall and Anthony Tolley's 2005 book, Shattered Sword. It was kind of one of the first books that I ever read to kind of forensically break down Midway from the Japanese perspective. And there's a ton of research that they did on that book. All right, 0340, Midway's PBYs have begun their morning searches. See Midway there in the background. But yeah, Parshall and Tolley's book, Shattered Sword, is a very excellent book. And he debunks quite a number of the myths that have sprouted up with the Battle of Midway over the decades since the war. I'm not going to go into them in this video, but they're there. You know, you can read the book. And of course, there's classics. There's Walter Lord's Incredible Victory. There's Gordon Pring's Miracle at Midway and all that. 0505. T. Cohen has spotted the Imperial Japanese Navy force. So in reality, two PBYs piloted by Lieutenant Howard Arty and Lieutenant William Chase spotted the Japanese carriers at separate times at 0530 and 0552 respectively. And now they've been positively ID'd as an enemy surface force, so we will now set them up as targets and greenlight the strikes. There we go, Yorktown's is greenlit. Go to Enterprise. All right, give you guys the target. And now I'm still getting used to the menus here. Go to Hornet. That's good. Green light. Okay. All strikes are greenlit. They'll launch in about 30 minutes. And oh, look at that. It's about 0521. The B-17s are taking off from Midway. They've, of course, included land-based airfields in this game now, as well as the ability for aircraft to attack land targets as well, to bomb land targets. So that's pretty cool. Again, game is still in early access. It's just, you know, accessible to the general public now, so if you want to download it on Steam, you can. See how it's playing out, but of course, again, it's a work in progress. They're still doing a lot of more fine-tuning of it. It's just that they now have kind of a more stable release now to play around with. Of course, I'm very interested in how the surface combat is going to play out. It's just again, I'll just reiterate, the scale of this game, it's unlike anything that I've really imagined. It really gets the feeling, just the feel, the ambiance, the look of the game. It really captures the scale, I think, of the Pacific in ways that many other games just do not. That being said, it doesn't really play like other games out there. You know, you don't have a lot of fine control over what your forces do, so to speak. So anyone expecting like sea power, you know, no, you can't micromanage your forces like you can in sea power. 0528, B-26 Marauders are taking off, and note that they are carrying their historically accurate torpedo armament that they did in the actual battle. I don't know your feelings on the 2019 movie that was Midway. There's a lot of issues with that movie, but at the very least, it gets like the first 6 months of the Pacific War correct, at least the broad strokes of it. I know people don't like it. Oh, it's a CGI fest. Well, where are you going to find World War II ships that still exist that you can fill in for all the carriers and the cruisers and destroyers and so on and so forth? You pretty much are kind of stuck with creating them with CGI. Are you going to make them out of models? We've detected the Japanese strike. They're approaching Midway. So in reality, at around 0430, that Japanese strike had already launched from their carriers. But yeah, the Japanese took off early in the morning. And now that it's 0538, our strikes are taking off from the Yorktown, Enterprise, and Hornet. Yorktown actually launched at 0700, and Enterprise and Hornet around an hour later. So I think CGI is now an acceptable medium for creating, things that no longer exist or that don't exist. Okay, 0550. B-17s are actually passing the Japanese Midway strike. There they are. And their gunners are shooting at them. Midway TBFs and SPDs are taking off to strike the Japanese. Midway was actually the combat debut of the TBF Avenger. See, it actually has a bomb bay to carry the torpedo in. It's not slung underneath the fuselage. And these are Henderson's Marines. Major Lofton Henderson's SPDs are taking off. He commanded VMSB 241. The game incorrectly says it's 240. Henderson himself would actually be killed during the battle, and Henderson Airfield later on Guadalcanal would be named in his honor. These are the Marine Buffaloes, the F-2As. They're engaging the Japanese incoming strike. And they're trying to dogfight with Zeros. They're not going to do particularly well. Buffalo is outclassed in pretty much every way, I think. But they're Marines, and they're going to do their best. Get them. Alright, 0600. The Japanese strike has now arrived. In reality, they reached the island like 30 or 40 minutes later. Given the way the game plays, I'm not sure how accurate and detailed you can make it to the way history actually played out. Because again, this is not a game where you micromanage your units. I mean, to a certain degree, you can control where they go and when they take off and all that, but exactly what they attack and how they attack and all that, it doesn't seem for there to be a way for you to control any of that. You just let the game do its thing, let the game AI run. I think in that respect, anyone who's trying to create a really specific historical scenario or instance, down to the fine little details, might be kind of disappointed in how this game works, unless the developers implement some way to actually do this stuff. So, I don't know, maybe. But eventually there will be a mission editor, which will be the same as the one they use to create the missions in this game. course, you can see the aircraft can now attack ground targets, which is pretty cool. A bunch of bombs hit the water there. I'm guessing from the Kates or something, not the Vowels. Director John Ford is somewhere down there. He's shooting footage of the actual battle. He was wounded in the attack on Sand Island, which is the island which is directly below us. Yeah, he was made a commander, I think, in real life, and he shot like secret footage and stuff for, I think, the Office of Strategic Services. So anyway. Note that only Sand Island was bombed. Historically, they bombed both islands. Around 0700, the strike leader, Tomonaga, he notified the Akagi that they would need another follow-up attack. Now, in reality, they actually bombed both of these islands, but only Sand Island was bombed in the game here. Looks like the B-26 Marauders are going in for the attack. Of course, the game accurately depicts them here as torpedo bombing, where the movie Midway shows them as sort of carpet bombing, or attempting to carpet bomb. So they began their attacks around 0710 or thereabouts. Guy's got a pretty good lineup, I think. Dropped. There we go. He still dropped a ways away. I don't think any of them will hit, but maybe they'll get lucky. I don't know. The film did accurately portray one thing. The damaged B-26 attempted to sort of kamikaze themselves into Akagi. We don't know exactly what happened, but for whatever reason, his plane was damaged, and the pilot probably said, like, well, screw it. If I'm going down, I'm taking one of them with me. So, yeah, that is the Akagi, yeah. One way to tell the Japanese carriers apart, if you don't want to memorize the island and the flight deck and the other superstructure and parts of the carrier, is to look on the rear of the flight deck. There's a kana symbol, which says the first kana of the carrier. So, A, or A for Akagi, Hi for Hiryu, Ka for Kaga, and Sa for Soryu. This is around 0800. Sweeney's B-17s are making their attacks. They made them from around 20,000 feet. Reportedly, they bracketed Hiryu and Soryu. They got pretty close, but they didn't obtain any real hits, though. Okay, bomb bay doors open. Bombs away. Funny because the B-17 seems like such a huge, plane, but they don't carry that many bombs. I wonder if those are B-17 bombs exploding over there. Oh, there's a carrier burning over there. What's going on? That's Soryu. Soryu's been damaged by a bomb or torpedo. Let's kind of surprising, given that these attacks are kind of paltry. Yeah, someone got a lucky hit in. Well, maybe one of the B-17s got lucky and straddled Soryu. Or it could be a torpedo hit from one of the B-26s. In which case, they're already doing better than the American torpedo bombers, the carrier torpedo bombers did. Alright, 0656, the first strike from Task Force 17 has arrived on target. Here he goes. He's bombing the Hiryu. And bombs away. He's gonna miss. He's gonna miss. Oh, some of them did not miss. Yep, that's Soryu. She's got the bomb or torpedo hit. Okay, this is Richard Dick Best. He's got a 0 on his tail.
You see, that's not what happened historically, because the torpedo bombers had already made their attacks and they all got shot down. And Ensign George Gay was the only one who survived, so therefore...
And here's Wade McCluskey. He's already made his run. Got no bombs on him.
Yeah, so the dive bombers were allowed to come in and make their strikes and, you know, sink a bunch of the carriers and that.
Of course, Jonathan Parshall asserts that the whole myth of the torpedo bombers pulling the Japanese combat air patrol Zeros down to sea level so the dive bombers can make their attack runs in unharassed is, he says, well, realistically, that's not really accurate. When you look at the performance characteristics of the Zero, it should have been easily able to climb back up to altitude to attack the dive bombers. But what it did essentially was, alright, 0700, Best is diving on Hiryu, and you're already bombed the Akagi around 1026, and he sank Hiryu later that day. Akagi is burning there. Partial asserts that what the sacrifice of the torpedo squadrons did was basically disrupt the Japanese operations, kind of put them on the back foot, and allow some breathing space for the Americans to make their attacks. But the whole idea, like, you know, oh, the torpedo bombers pulled the Japanese Zeros down to them so the dive bombers can make their attack, that's a fiction. This guy's diving on Kaga. She's already been bombed in the meantime. He's gonna miss again, or two. Oh, some hits. Dang, they're really going after a Kaga there. Who's that? That is... That's, I think it's Hiryu, yeah. She spit all our fires out, but she's got some big holes in her. That'll just buff right out. That's Soryu. She still has minimal damage. And that's a Kagi. She's got some holes and a fire burning on her. And now the Midway strike has returned to the carriers. Alas, they don't really have much of a place to land, so I don't know what you're going to do there, buddy. And now the Americans have returned to their carriers. Good show, boys. I don't know if we sank any of them, but definitely did some damage. That's good. Snooper. Snooper over Task Force 17. I'm curious to see how surface combat is going to play out in this game. So it's 0800. Realistically, Tony number 4 aircraft spotted Task Force 16 around 7:30. And at that point, they were trying to figure out what was going on, and Nagumo was sitting there kind of vacillating around like 0815 or something like that. Whether or not we should set up another strike or rearm the aircraft or what. Because now he knows that the American carriers are out here. So he just has to decide, does he want to bomb Midway again, or does he want to go after the carriers? In the meantime, all our aircraft are returning to the carriers. But a thought that's been going through my mind lately is that, given how the game is basically pretty much focused on you giving instructions and commands to a carrier task force, I wonder how many game mechanics are going to be centered around using, here's Hornet's cap, they're going to shoot down the snooper. I wonder how many game mechanics are going to be used for go towards controlling surface action battles. I mean, we know it will be modeled in the game, as they said. Not to a really fine amount of detail or like really beefy extent, but there will be surface action in the game. So the question is, how's it going to play out? Who knows? Surface action may end up just being this incredibly boring exercise, just watching ships shoot at each other until one eventually sinks. It could be very interesting, it could not be. Right? Are the Japanese going to use their surface-fired torpedoes from their destroyers and cruisers and stuff? Or what's going to happen? How's it going to look like? So, who knows? We'll have to see. Well, Dick Best made it back. He's landed now. I think his aircraft should just say B1. Well, anyway, you made it back. Let's look at their reports. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3 carriers damaged. That's from the naval strike from Yorktown. About Enterprise. They said 2 carriers damaged. And now Hornet. Hornet says they got 3 carriers damaged. Okay. Well, pilots never exaggerate their claims whatsoever, no. I'm sure all those bombs hit. was add a couple of battleships onto that, right? All right, let's set up some new strikes on the targets now. Eventually, the developers will implement more complex controls for the things for carrier operations, like better fighter direction officer management, flight deck management, in-flight ability to change targets and rebase the aircraft, scout and strike doctrine options, things like that. They also include more special effects, radio chatter, visual effects, sound effects, things like that. Dang it, we got new intel coming in, and the CVs have actually scattered, so all these strikes that I set up are now just going every which way. Frustrating. Well, that's life, right? You don't always get the intelligence that you want, right? Yes, cancel that one. Well, funny thing is, the way that we found out that Midway was actually the target is that Midway sent an unencrypted message out in the clear saying that their water distillation plant had broken down. No, it wasn't. And then, of course, the Japanese naturally picked up on this transmission and repeated it, saying like, hey, target AF's, water plant is broken. It's like, that was a very clever ruse to see if we can find out which target's which. Alright, I canceled Task Force 16 strikes here, so only Yorktown's aircraft made it to the show. And that carrier's really taking it down there. This guy's lined up pretty good. Now, in an ideal, perfect world, all the attacks on a carrier will be along the long axis of it. Makes it easier to hit. Yeah, but she's turning hard. This is Soryu. Soryu's turning hard to port. She's got some aircraft right there on the bow. And... miss. Oh, that was not a miss. That was a hit. Well, I don't think she'll be launching aircraft anytime soon. I don't know if the torpedo bombers got lucky in that strike. Probably not. Okay, Admiral, we have received reports of the enemy fleet disengaging. Do you wish to stay in the flag plot, or shall we head for debriefing and combat assessment? Let's debrief.
Midway stands. As the courageous island licks its wounds, the latest tallies report an outstanding victory for U.S. forces. Navy, Marine, and Army airmen have struck a crushing blow against the enemy armada, shattering its recent streak of bloody successes. The great sacrifices of American warriors have not been in vain. For this dramatic turning point will surely be recorded in the history books for generations to come. With the Japanese Navy broken and in retreat, High Command is already shaping new plans to restore Allied superiority in the Pacific. Many trials still lie ahead, but spirits are high and confidence is strong. At Midway, Japan's imperial ambitions met their doom, and the enemy's final downfall has begun.
Okay, Midway stands, and so does the U.S. Navy, proudly so. Although the battle began under uncertain circumstances, the valiant crews flying from Midway and our carriers prevailed in a clash that has now turned the tide in the Pacific. The enemy's sword was irreparably blunted by this reversal of fortune, and our outstanding victory is giving hope to Allied forces around the world. We have defied fate, and the near future now smiles upon us, yet Tokyo remains far off. It is now up to us to lead a new offensive in the South Pacific. Thanks to you and your men, we achieved a strategic and tactical victory. Alright, pretty good. Alas, we did not sink the carriers as happened historically, but we damaged them. And we did force them into retreat, so that's still a win. Didn't lose any ships of our own at that, so pretty good. Alright, that'll do it for this one. We'll see you next time, folks.